It's time to get funny. Funny how? Funny like a clown. This is Funny like a Clown podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth. September 7th, 2021. This is episode 125. So, 25 is a good round number. We're about halfway to the 150th episode, which I'll bring you something special for because I always do that. As always, today's episode is brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce for the spicy, sweet, savory taste at game time. There's only one G Vegas available at www.gvegas.webs.com. You want to talk about something spicy and hot? This comedian, spicy and hot, Mr. D.L. Hughley. That's who we're going to be discussing today. As we are reviewing the history of comedy here on Funny Like Clown podcast. And if you want to be a good comedian, if you want to know about comedy, know the past. I have Bill Kirchenbauer on the podcast. He was from ABC's Just the 10 of Us, hit comedian back in the day. And, I said, how do you be a good comedian? He said, know the history of comedy. That's what's going to make a good comedian. Because if you want to be a good plumber, you got to know the history. You got to know how to be a plumber. You got to study plumbing. Be a good lawyer, you got to know law. You got to study law. You want to be a comedian, you got to study comedy. You got to know its past. What better way to do that than join me here on Funny Like Clown podcast? And we talk about guys like D.L. Hughley, actor, political commentator, radio host, author, stand-up comedian. Because they say if you throw enough shit against the wall, some might stick. So if you're a comedian and you keep your hand in a little bit of everything, something might take off, and that's what you go with. So here's a guy kept his hand in a little bit of everything, and you never know what's going to take off. So best known for BET's Comic View, that's Black Entertainment Television's network. Comic View, he was the original host from 92 to 93, where that's a great thing because there aren't a lot of venues for young and upcoming comics. You really got to work hard to get a break. I'm going on vacation to Atlantic City, hopefully this weekend, and I've been calling comedy clubs and I've been online researching, and I cannot get to square one about any comedy shows going on down there. Yeah, that was last week, that was last month. Contact this one, contact that one. Nobody gets back to you. So you got a show like that where you're gonna give a platform to young comics coming up. That's a great thing for him to do. Let's see. Once he was on that show as the host, getting recognized for his stand-up comedy and how good of a comedian he was, they gave him the break on Black Entertainment Television's Comic View. After he got noticed on that, he was on ABC's and UPN's The Hugleys, which that's major television network right now if you're on ABC. The Hugleys, it was a sitcom about his childhood life that he did. Known in the big four comics of the original Kings of Comedy, I believe Spike Lee put together a video for that. The original four. They called themselves the Kings of Comedy. From that, they launched this national tour. And if you're in comedy, how'd you like to be on with these names? Steve Harvey was on that tour. Cedric the Entertainer was on that tour. Bernie Mac was on that tour. And of course, D.L. Hughley was the fourth. And man, those are some names to be in with because they called themselves the Kings back then, and they're even bigger nowadays because that was years ago they did that tour and just turned into a big thing. Let's see. After that, CNN came calling. They wanted him for CNN's Hughley Breaks the News. He was on there for a while. Also, a correspondent for Jay Leno's version of The Tonight Show on NBC, another major television network. A Boston guy, Jay Leno. He was wicked funny when he parked the car here in Boston, and but the Tonight Show, Jay can't come up with that many jokes every night. He needs writers, he needs correspondents, he needs skit artists, he needs just to have your name attached with the Tonight Show shows you're at the top of your game in that industry. Also a radio personality, which I mean, radio is a great venue, to keep you going. Not that you can do anything on radio, like, Howard Stern, he got multiple fines. He got thrown off of stations. They were sick of paying the fines. Yeah, he was the number one radio show, but it cost them a lot to keep him on the air. But it's more of a venue because, a lot of these clubs, you play a club, hey, Dennis, you're funny. Come play our club. Okay. But, you got to work clean. You got to do this. You got to do that. It's like, well, if you think I'm funny, then why are you telling me what to do? You hired me to do what I do. Let me do it. But there's rules you got to play by, television, radio, any of that. You know, radio is a much more laid back venue where you can do what you want. Where if you're on something like the Tonight Show, okay, if you're going to take a deep breath, if you're going to sneeze, if you're going to blink, they want to know whatever you're going to do because if you do it, it's not that everybody knows you can't swear on television, but it goes past you can't swear. Obviously, you can't do that, but it's so they call them hot spots. Okay, if you bring up a subject that's considered a hot topic, we can't have you do that. That's going to look bad. It's like, well, who wants to talk about something that's not a hot topic? That's what people want to hear about. They want to hear about the yeah. Let me do something not funny, then you'll be happy. Let me do something not edgy. What are you bringing me on for then? But that's the price you want to pay if you want to be on television. You got to play by their rules. Where radio, you have rules, but it's less rules. Okay, that's why podcasts are so fun, because there's zero rules on a podcast. Do whatever the fuck you want on a podcast, and that's why you tune them in. Because if you want the rules, then you go to CNN or something like that. If you want no rules, you turn into a podcast. That's the reason you come here. So, radio personality in New York for a while. Here's one my mom would have got a kick out of and probably remembers because she was a big fan of the show. 2013, he took 9th place on Dancing with the Stars, which I didn't personally watch that show, but I know it was a popular show, Dancing with the Stars. Just asked my mom; she was a big fan of that show. So I don't remember if she remembers DL Hughley or not, but took 9th place. That's not bad to be in, I guess. Let's take it back to the beginning. He was born in L.A., where as a young kid, he went down the wrong path. He became a member of the Bloods, which is a L.A. street gang. And I remember I lived in Chino for a couple of years when I was a kid with my family, and it's right below L.A. And I remember it was the Crips of the Bloods, and those were the two big gangs at the time. And they shoot you right on the street for wearing the wrong colors or something. It was like really, really a crazy thing out there. But that's what the kids in the inner city did, because you cooped up like that, you learn to survive on the streets. Guess he got expelled from school an awful lot, not an awful lot. You get expelled once, you can't come back, and really went down the wrong path. But he caught himself, which not a lot of these kids do. They ended up dying on the streets. He turned his back on the gang life. He went and got his GED after he got thrown out of school. Put in the effort to get a GED. Then he got a job at the LA Times, and guess while he was at the LA Times, that's where he started pursuing stand-up comedy. And as we mentioned, it got him noticed as stand-up comedy, 1992 to 93, the original host of Comic View. And, once you're noticed and once you get on TV, that's your break. And, it's getting your foot in the door. We mentioned on the podcast before, well, his foot's in the door with Comic View. Yeah, it only lasted a couple of years, but it was one of BET's, shows that got recognized. From there, he got a job. He appeared on the 3rd season of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I believe he was Will Smith's friend from Philadelphia. He was a stand-up comedian who came in town and played that on one of the episodes right there. And again, one of the top sitcoms at the time, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Another great one to add to your resume. So he's parlaying what he's doing, turning it into something bigger. Let's see. In 1998 to 2002, he wrote, produced, and starred in a sitcom called The Hughleys. They see The Hughleys based on his childhood stories. Well, I guess it was poor family growing up in a rich neighborhood, and because the real life stuff, that's what you know the best. That was his real life stuff, so that's what he's going to make a sitcom about. I paid child support for 22 years, and that's what I based my comedy around, because that's what I know. I know all about paying child support and how unfair it was to my son and how it breaks families apart. And hopefully I spread awareness that someday we can give kids mom and dad back equally. Okay, it won't be all about the money anymore. It'll be about the parents, and that's what needs to happen. Well, DL Hughley, he had his own sitcom, and he's talking about his childhood because that's what he knows. Let's see. Released in 2005, a comedy album. Notes from the GED section. Okay, so about his life getting a GED and what it's like taking that route instead of going to school route, which you got to put the effort in. Where in high school, your parents are forcing you to go. Where if later on in life you get your GED, nobody's forcing you. That's effort you got to put in that you chose to put in. Let's see. Had a short-lived talk show on Comedy Central, called Weekends with DL Hughley, and Weekends with DL, I guess. And it didn't last long. It wasn't a big hit, but just to be noticed by Comedy Central. I mean, it's one of the biggest comedy venues at the time. If you get on Comedy Central, just to be recognized. So he's getting recognized. He's getting noticed by some of the biggest venues in comedy. Let's see. He had roles in Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, NBC Scrubs. I remember that show, Scrubs. He hosted the BET Awards, which I guess that's the black version of the Oscars or the Emmys or whatever you got going on there. So here's a guy who's staying in the game, getting on some of the biggest shows. What are some of the other biggest shows at the time? Let's see, 2010, he was guest moderator on ABC's The View, which, if you're in the political ring, which I guess politics was his thing, like I said, The View is the show to be on, man. That's like the daytime political thing, to be on, where nighttime's got a lot of political shows, but the daytime, I mean, The View, that's a big political daytime show. Let's see, he was on TBS's Glory Days. He guest hosted Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which I remember that was the hottest show at the time. It was so popular, I think it was on like every night of the week, and they burnt the show out. It was so popular, so it might have lasted longer. They kept it on white night a week. You couldn't wait to see it, but when you could see it every night, every week, I mean, it's going to burn itself out a lot quicker. But that's what the people wanted. That's what they gave him. Put out his first book in 2012. I Want You to Shut the Fuck Up. Okay, self-explanatory, but let's see. 2017, his second book, Black Man in the White House. That was based on Obama's term in the White House there. 2018, and his third book, How Not to Get Shot, which I guess if you're a young kid growing up on the streets of LA, you need to know how not to get shot. That's good advice from a guy who lived it right there. So I'd rather hear from a guy who lived it from a guy who's just assuming, you know what I'm saying? Let's see, 2020, he put out his most recent book, Surrender White People. So I guess blacks are taking over in his world. I don't know if they are or not, but apparently, that's a sensitive subject. Which if you get involved with it, I don't know. If I put out the Black Entertainment Television Network, okay, nobody says nothing about it. If I put out the white entertainment only television network, people lose their fucking minds. But hey, I guess it's what street, side of the street you grew up on. I don't know. So 2019, he started hosting a talk show on TV1. So again, staying in the game. Let's see. He was selected by CNN out of a bunch of comics to write and host a new comedic show on their network because comedy and politics. It's always the Daily Show. The Colbert Show. I mean, these are all political shows, but they make you laugh at politics rather than take it serious. It's a break from the serious shows. So, but it's a big thing. People like to laugh about politics and make fun of the candidate they don't like or whatever. But called it DL Hughley Breaks the News, which debuted in 2008. Ran until 2009 when he announced he was going to end the show so he could move back to LA and work out of LA and be closer to his family, which, I mean, family's everything. If you're away from your family, you can only be away for so long, and you get to the point you got to make the choice. What's more important to me, my family or my career? And most times you get, a lot of people choose the career. A lot of people choose family, and hats off to them if they did, because there's nothing more important than family in life. Let's see, 2009, the DL Hughley morning show he did on radio. It was on WEPN. Which is now formerly it was WRKS. I guess best known back in the day it was called 98.7 Kiss FM, which if you grew up in the 80s when I did, you knew Kiss FM. That was a big radio show at the time. They've changed names, but they got a national audience, and it's a big radio network to be on. I guess his show is ready to go to syndication, which means if you're in syndication, you're making money for work you've already done. We've talked about this before on the podcast. And when you got checks rolling in the door for money you've already done, and you can go out and earn money for something you're doing now, that's when you really hit the big time. I guess he got in a big dispute with the radio show over money and how much he was supposed to get and how much they were going to get. They couldn't come to a resolution. Instead of going to syndication, they pulled the show off the air and stopped airing it anymore. So that didn't work out with the old radio bit, but didn't work out until 2013 when Reach Media announced they had a deal for a drive time afternoon radio show, the DL Hughley show. And so we went from daytime radio to the drive time radio, which, you can't watch TV while you're driving. So radio is a big thing. In the morning when people are going to work, they listen. And in the afternoon when you're driving home from work, those are the big hot spots on radio right there, because that's when you're in a car and people are tuning in. Let's see. June 19th, 2020, he collapsed while performing in Nashville, Tennessee. He was doing a comedy show, collapsed. It was initially reported it was from exhaustion because, everybody sees, I've had that happen a lot. Man, it must be so fun being a comedian. It's like, well, yeah, it's 10% fun. The making people laugh, that's the funnest thing you ever do in your life. But the 90% of business and politics that you got to go through to get to that 10%, that's the hell of being a comic because the travel, the 2-hour drives, the 3-hour drives to a comedy venue to perform, uh, hopping on a plane, you get off a plane, I got to go to Vegas, I got to go to Alaska. You get off the plane, you got jet lag, you got to perform. You don't know if it's day or night. You're ready to go to bed. You got to be awake. I mean, it's a tough travel. It's a tough life being a comedian. I mean, just on a local stage, I've experienced it. On a national stage like this guy, it's even tougher. And I say that's why a lot of comics turn to drugs because the demand on your body, unless you're in peak physical shape, they turn to drugs to keep their body going because there's no way anybody's got a body could put up with the rigors of being a stand-up comedian. One day you're in LA, next day you're in Atlantic City, next day you're in Florida, next day you're here. I mean, it's just you're constantly on the go. It's a tough lifestyle. You got to deal with the politics of oh, something happened to you and you didn't get me in it. Well, if you didn't get me in it, I'm not going to get you on my shows. And if you don't book that one, and I won't book you. And if you work with him, you can't work with me. And if you got something going on, you better get me on it. Or if I got something going on, I'm going to get you on it. It's just the politics, the business side, the money with the venues. The venues want to tell you how to do comedy. It's like, I'm the comedian. I know how to do comedy. Why are you telling me what to do? So there's a lot of bullshit you got to deal with before you get to the actual performing, which is the fun part. And apparently, DL Hughley, he just collapsed from that pressure right on stage. And well, they reported it was exhaustion. Then he went to the emergency room, and apparently he was diagnosed with COVID. Which if you get in a car accident, it's COVID. If you fall in the street, it's COVID. If you jump off a building, it's COVID. No matter what you get sick from nowadays, it's COVID. Okay, so hey, I'm not a doctor, I'm a comedian, but I know bullshit when I hear it, and I can smell. Not that I'm saying it's not a real disease, I'm sure it is, but they've way blown it out of, made it into a bigger thing, in my opinion, than what it actually is. But I don't know. Hey, that's a personal choice, and that's why we're Americans. You can choose to follow your own path, or whether you want to believe it or not. Some other stuff you might have remembered him from, fun stuff he was in. The movies Inspector Gadget 1 and 2. He was in those movies. Great kid movies at the time. Scary Movie 3, some of the comedy horror classics of all time. Spy School he was in. TV's Hawaii Five-0. Premium Blend he was on TV. America's Funniest Home Videos he was on, which there's another avenue. If you're a comic and you want to get on TV and nobody give you a break, well, here's a show you can make your own funny video and send it in and get on TV. So a lot of comics take that route. I remember there's a Boston comic. I guess his sister just got her driver's license, and the parents said they'd buy her a car, and they had this old beat up clunker, and you start it up and it smoked, and they gave that to her, and they were getting a reaction, and she was all shook up. Then they pulled out this actual brand new car that they had bought her, and the old clunker was just a joke just to get a reaction, and made it all the way. He got himself on America's Funniest Home Videos, so now he's got a television credit of what he's been on. So you take any avenue you can in comedy, whatever gets you there. That's the game. He was on HBO's Comedy Half Hour, which I know right now Netflix is the big thing in comedy. Before that, it was Comedy Central was the big thing. Well, back in the day, HBO was the place to be for comedy. It was the number one spot you wanted to be on if you were a comedian. I know things have changed, and who knows what'll be after Netflix. But back in the day, 80s, 90s, HBO was the place to be, because if you got on late night television, it was cool. But like I said, you can't be you on late night television. They're going to tell you the rules. And when HBO came along, that was the first place you could do whatever you wanted. There was no rules because it was pay TV. I remember Sam Kinison. He was the comedian I got into comedy for. And, these television executives would come to see him, and they'd be crying, laughing. Sam Kinison was so fun. And they're like, the guy is hysterical, but what are we going to do with him? We can't put him on TV. What can you do? Then along came HBO. They put him on there. He could do what he wanted to do, and boom, he took off. So hats off to that kind of a venue right there. And even YouTube, that's the thing. Who's the next YouTube star? Who's going to the next video that goes viral? How many hits are you going to get? I was out in Vegas, man. I said big billboards. There's this comedian performing, this many YouTube hits. So I mean, what a venue this is. DL Hughley, just, I mean, staying relevant all these years. I mean, some great movies he was in, you know, radio, CNN came calling, HBO. I know they got them for a while. They did like a local access thing. He got to host one of those. They brought out some big stars to host those, and just what an amazing career by an amazing comedian. And you know, he kept you laughing, okay, all these years, telling stories about his life. So you want to make somebody laugh, you tell them you listen to Funny Like Clown podcast, and their host, Dennis Wirth, told you to go to work tomorrow and tell somebody a joke. So go in tomorrow, tell somebody a joke, and make them laugh. Because if they laugh, they're going to tell somebody else the joke. They're going to laugh. It's going to carry on and on. And you got worldwide, that one joke's just going to keep making people laugh. And you're responsible because you started it. Laughter is the best medicine. It's a lot tougher to bring someone up than it is to put them down. You can put them down any day of the week. Try to bring somebody up. Tell them a joke. Make them laugh. Tell them you heard it here on Final Clown Podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth. Till next week, I'll be laughing. What are you going to be doing?